Behind the iconic catchphrase and groundbreaking police work lay bizarre casting accidents, religious restrictions that neutered fight scenes, laugh-in reunion episodes, and a tragic star whose faith conflicts ultimately killed the show, revealing secrets about TV's first black female cop drama that are stranger than fiction. Fact 1. Cicely Tyson's painful exit. Cicely Tyson was supposed to be the star of Get Christie Love, but a freak accident the night before her meeting with producers changed television history forever. The acclaimed actress, who had just delivered her powerful performance as Jane Pittman in the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, was initially approached by ABC executives who wanted her for the lead role in their new cop show. However, Tyson wasn't exactly thrilled about the opportunity. In her biography, Tyson revealed that she was actually upset when she heard ABC had her in mind for Christie Love. After playing the dignified and inspiring Jane Pittman, there was absolutely no way she was going to strip down and play what she saw as a hooker with a badge. Despite her reservations, she agreed to meet with the producers out of professional courtesy, but fate had other plans. The night before the scheduled meeting, Tyson suffered third-degree burns to her foot in what can only be described as incredibly bad timing. The severity of the injury was serious enough that doctors ordered her to stay completely off her feet for 3 weeks, making it impossible for her to attend the meeting or begin any kind of production work. With Tyson unable to take the role, the producers had to quickly find a replacement. That replacement turned out to be Teresa Graves, who had gained recognition as one of the bikini-clad dancers on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Interestingly, Tyson and producer David L. Wolper would eventually work together on the groundbreaking miniseries Roots in 1977, proving that sometimes when one door closes, another much better one opens. Tyson's accident, while painful at the time, may have saved her from a role that didn't match her artistic vision and allowed Graves to make television history as the first black woman to star in her own hour-long drama series. Fact 2. Character used handbags as weapons. In the original 1974 TV movie that launched Get Christie Love, the title character had some truly bizarre fighting techniques that made her look more like a cartoon superhero than a realistic police detective. Christie Love would literally knock out bad guys by hitting them with her large handbags, swinging these oversized purses like medieval weapons to send criminals crashing to the ground. The absurdity didn't stop there, as she would follow up these handbag attacks with dramatic karate chops that would instantly render her opponents unconscious. This cartoonish approach to action sequences was clearly inspired by the campy style of comic books and Saturday morning cartoons, where heroes could defeat villains with the most unlikely objects. The TV movie embraced this over-the-top aesthetic, showing Christie using whatever was at hand to take down the bad guys, with her trusty handbag serving as her weapon of choice in multiple scenes. The fighting style was so exaggerated that viewers could practically see the comic book sound effects like pow and bam floating above the action. However, when the show transitioned from a single TV movie to a regular weekly series, the producers realized that this cartoon-like violence wouldn't work for a long-running cop show that needed to maintain some level of believability. The network and creators made the decision to tone down these ridiculous fighting sequences significantly for the regular series episodes. By the time the weekly show premiered in September of 1974, Christie's combat style had become much more realistic and grounded, focusing on actual police procedures and more believable action sequences rather than the handbag-swinging antics that had characterized the original movie. The change reflected the show's attempt to be taken more seriously as a legitimate police drama rather than a comedic action romp. Fact 3. Jehovah's Witness restrictions killed the show. Teresa Graves converted to become a Jehovah's Witness right after filming the pilot movie, and this religious transformation created massive problems for the producers that would ultimately doom the entire series. What the network executives thought would be a straightforward cop show suddenly became nearly impossible to produce because Graves began making what the producers considered unreasonable demands based on her new faith. She absolutely refused to do any violent scenes, which was a serious problem for an action show about a police detective who was supposed to fight crime and capture dangerous criminals. The restrictions became even more challenging when Graves decided that Christie Love would never drink alcohol under any circumstances, though this wasn't too difficult to work around since she was a police officer on duty. However, the situation got much worse when Graves insisted that her character could never lie, not even once, which created an almost impossible situation for the writers. The entire premise of Get Christie Love was built around Christie working undercover, which meant she constantly had to pretend to be someone else and lie to criminals in order to infiltrate their operations and gather evidence. The producers found themselves in the bizarre position of trying to create storylines for an undercover cop who couldn't lie, couldn't be involved in violence, and couldn't do anything that went against Jehovah's Witness beliefs. Graves had become so deeply committed to her faith that she refused to have Christie do anything that contradicted her religious principles, even though these principles directly conflicted with the basic requirements of playing a police detective. Her increasing restrictions on what her character could and couldn't do led to the extreme weakening of the show's storylines and action sequences, making it difficult for viewers to believe in Christie as an effective law enforcement officer, which ultimately contributed to the series being cancelled after just one season. Fact 4. Star worked only until 5 p.m. Teresa Graves negotiated one of the most unusual work schedules in television history, insisting that she would only work until 5 o'clock in the evening and demanding specific time off for her religious activities as part of her contract with ABC. This rigid schedule created enormous logistical challenges for the production team, who had to completely restructure their filming plans around Graves' religious commitments rather than following the typical Hollywood schedule where actors work whatever hours are needed to complete scenes. The scheduling restrictions went far beyond just the daily 5 o'clock cutoff time, as Graves also required a guaranteed release from work once a week so she could attend her Bible study meetings with other Jehovah's Witnesses. This meant that every single week, the producers had to plan their shooting schedule around losing their lead actress for an entire day, forcing them to either film scenes without Christie Love or rearrange the entire production calendar to accommodate her religious obligations. Even more challenging was Graves' demand for a 2-day furlough whenever the Jehovah's Witnesses held their large assemblies at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. These religious gatherings happened multiple times throughout the year, and each time one was scheduled, the entire Get Christie Love production would essentially shut down because their star was completely unavailable for filming. The producers had to build these religious assembly dates into their production schedule months in advance, treating them like mandatory holidays that could not be moved or ignored. According to reports from the time, Graves was spending approximately 100 hours per month on her religious activities during nights and weekends, in addition to the time she required during regular work hours. Her commitment to pioneering for her faith was so intense that it fundamentally changed how a television show could operate, creating a precedent that few other productions have ever had to accommodate. Fact 5. Laugh in cast reunion episode. One episode of Get Christie Love, titled Murder on High C, became an unexpected reunion special for the cast of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, featuring 6 of Teresa Graves' former comedy co-stars in completely dramatic roles that were totally different from their usual comedic performances. This episode is widely considered the best installment of the entire Get Christie Love series, not just because it had an unusually good script and interesting storyline, but because the stunt casting worked surprisingly well despite being such an unusual choice. Arte Johnson, who was famous for playing the German soldier Wolfgang on Laugh-In with his catchphrase "very interesting," took on the completely serious role of Morton Perkins, a meek loner and electronics genius who becomes a mad bomber terrorizing the city. Johnson's performance was particularly impressive because he managed to be genuinely menacing and believable as a dangerous criminal, showing acting skills that viewers had never seen during his comedy days on Laugh-In. The other Laugh-In veterans who appeared in dramatic roles included Johnny Brown, Judy Carn, Henry Gibson, Gary Owens, and Joanne Worley, with all of them except Worley giving surprisingly strong performances in their serious acting parts. The episode's plot involved Christie Love trying to track down the bomber while he stayed one step ahead of her investigation, building to a climax where Perkins planned to leave his latest explosive device at an outdoor concert where a high musical note would trigger the detonation. The reunion episode demonstrated that these comedy performers had real dramatic acting abilities that had been hidden behind their comedic personas on Laugh-In. For Teresa Graves, working with her old castmates must have felt like a comfortable return to her roots, since she had gained national recognition as one of the bikini-clad go-go dancers on Laugh-In before landing her starring role as Christie Love. Fact 6. Christie's yellow Volkswagen convertible mystery. Christie Love's bright yellow Volkswagen convertible became an unexpected source of suspense for viewers who found themselves constantly worried about whether this distinctive little car would make it through each episode in one piece. The cheerful yellow bug was such an unusual choice for a police detective that it immediately caught viewers' attention whenever it appeared on screen, and its small size and vulnerability made it seem like a target just waiting to be destroyed during the show's various action sequences and car chases. The Volkswagen convertible was completely different from the typical vehicles that television cops drove in the 1970s, when most police shows featured big, powerful American muscle cars that could handle high-speed pursuits and rough treatment. Christie's delicate foreign convertible looked like it belonged at a beach picnic, rather than chasing down dangerous criminals through the streets of Los Angeles, which made viewers anxious every time she got into a dangerous situation while driving it. What made the car even more memorable was how viewers would start watching each episode with a sense of dread about its fate, wondering if this would finally be the episode where Christie's beloved yellow bug would get blown up, crashed, or shot full of holes by the bad guys. The car's bright color made it impossible to miss during action scenes, and its convertible top seemed to make it even more fragile and exposed to potential damage from bullets, explosions, or accidents. The producers seemed to understand that the car had become a character in its own right, and they deliberately played with viewers' expectations by putting the Volkswagen in increasingly dangerous situations throughout the series. Whether Christie was speeding through narrow alleys, being chased by armed criminals, or parking in areas where explosions were likely to happen, fans found themselves holding their breath and hoping that the cheerful yellow convertible would somehow survive another episode intact. Fact 7. Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs reference. Quentin Tarantino paid tribute to Get Christie Love in his 1992 debut film, Reservoir Dogs, by having his criminal characters engage in a detailed discussion about the show during one of their conversations, proving that the obscure 70s cop series had made a lasting impression on the future Oscar-winning director. The scene features Mr. Pink, played by Steve Buscemi, Mr. White, played by Harvey Keitel, Mr. Orange, played by Tim Roth, and Nice Guy Eddie, played by Chris Penn, as they try to remember details about the show and debate who actually starred in it. During their conversation, the characters get confused about whether Pam Grier played Christie Love, with one of them correctly pointing out that Pam Grier was in the blaxploitation films, while Christie Love was like a Pam Grier television show, but without Pam Grier actually being in it. The discussion becomes a perfect example of Tarantino's signature style of having characters talk about pop culture references that most viewers might not immediately recognize, using these conversations to reveal character details while also showing off the director's encyclopedic knowledge of obscure movies and television shows. The most memorable moment in the scene comes when one of the characters recites Christie's famous catchphrase, "You're under arrest, sugar," in the distinctive way that Teresa Graves used to deliver the line on the original show. This reference was particularly meaningful because Get Christie Love represented exactly the kind of forgotten 70s television that Tarantino loved to rediscover and celebrate in his films, especially shows that blended action with elements from blaxploitation cinema. The inclusion of Get Christie Love in Reservoir Dogs helped introduce the show to a whole new generation of viewers who had never heard of Teresa Graves, or her groundbreaking role as television's first black female police detective, giving the series a second life in popular culture more than 20 years after it had been canceled. Fact 8. Ron Rifkin's serial killer debut. Ron Rifkin made one of his earliest television appearances in the Get Christie Love pilot movie, playing a chilling serial killer named Normand, who targeted prostitutes, nearly 3 decades before he would become famous for his role as the sinister Ariel Sloane on the hit spy series Alias. In the opening sequence of the 1974 TV movie, Christie goes undercover as a prostitute to catch this dangerous predator, and Rifkin's performance as the menacing killer provided viewers with their first glimpse of the actor's talent for playing sophisticated villains. The role of Normand was particularly significant because it showcased Rifkin's ability to portray calculating and intelligent criminals, a skill that would serve him well throughout his career but wouldn't reach its peak until he landed the role of Sloane on Alias in 2001. On that show, Rifkin played one of television's most memorable antagonists, a master manipulator who served as both mentor and enemy to Jennifer Garner's character Sydney Bristow, creating a complex relationship that kept viewers guessing about his true motives for 5 seasons. What makes this connection even more interesting is how both roles demonstrated Rifkin's gift for playing characters who could appear harmless or even charming on the surface while hiding extremely dangerous intentions underneath. His Normand character in Get Christie Love used this same deceptive quality to lure his victims, while his Sloane character on Alias was a master of appearing trustworthy while secretly orchestrating elaborate schemes. The contrast between these two performances, separated by almost 30 years, shows how Rifkin evolved as an actor while maintaining his specialty for playing intelligent and unpredictable villains. Viewers who discovered Rifkin through his acclaimed work on Alias might be surprised to learn that his talent for creating memorable bad guys was already evident in this early appearance on a forgotten 70s cop show, proving that great acting talent often reveals itself long before an actor achieves widespread recognition. Fact 9. Two different supervisors. Mid-season. Get Christie Love underwent a major cast change right in the middle of its only season when Charles Cioffi, who played Christie's supervisor Lieutenant Matt Reardon, was suddenly replaced by Jack Kelly as Captain Arthur Ryan after just 12 episodes. Cioffi had been with the show from the very beginning, appearing in the season premiere and continuing through the episode titled The Longest Fall, establishing a specific dynamic between his character and Christie that viewers had become accustomed to watching. The transition happened abruptly when Jack Kelly took over the role of Christie's boss, starting with the 13th episode called The Deadly Sport, bringing a completely different energy and personality to the Dédain Prusse and position of Christie's superior officer. Kelly's Captain Arthur Ryan was a distinct character rather than simply a replacement for Reardon, meaning that viewers had to adjust to an entirely new relationship dynamic between Christie and her commanding officer for the final 10 episodes of the series. This kind of major cast change in the middle of a television season was relatively unusual, especially for such an important supporting role as Christie's boss, who appeared in most episodes and served as a key figure in the show's police station scenes. The change meant that the writers had to create new storylines and dialogue patterns to establish Captain Ryan's character and his working relationship with Christie, essentially starting over with this crucial dynamic halfway through the show's run. Neither the network nor the production company ever publicly explained the reasons behind Charles Cioffi's departure from the series, leaving fans to wonder whether it was due to creative differences, scheduling conflicts, or other behind-the-scenes issues. The cast change contributed to the show's overall sense of instability during its brief run, as viewers never got the chance to see either supervisor relationship fully develop over multiple seasons. Fact 10. Based on white character, Get Christie Love was originally based on Dorothy Unak's crime thriller novel, The Ledger, which featured a completely different main character named Christie O'Para, a white New York City police detective whose story was dramatically transformed when the producers decided to create their television adaptation. Unak herself was a former police officer who brought authentic experiences to her writing, creating realistic crime stories that reflected the actual challenges and procedures of police work rather than the fantasy scenarios that often appeared on television cop shows. The character transformation happened when the show's creators and producers learned about Officer Olga Ford, a real black police officer who had joined the New York Police Department in 1958 and was making history as one of the few African-American women working in law enforcement during that era. Ford's inspiring real-life story convinced the producers that they could create something much more groundbreaking and socially significant by changing Christie O'Para from a white detective into Christie Love, a black undercover officer who could represent the experiences and perspectives that had never been shown on network television before. This decision meant that Dorothy Unak's original character was completely dropped from the adaptation, with only the basic premise of a female detective and some plot elements surviving the transition from book to screen. Officer Olga Ford became so integral to the project that she was hired as the series' technical advisor, helping to ensure that the show accurately portrayed police procedures and the unique challenges faced by women and minorities in law enforcement during the 1970s. The producers were also eager to capitalize on the popularity of blaxploitation films like Coffee and Cleopatra Jones, which were earning significant money at the box office by featuring strong black female action heroes who could fight crime while challenging traditional stereotypes about race and gender in action entertainment. Fact 11. Jaclyn Smith guest appearance. Jaclyn Smith made a guest appearance on Get Christie Love in an episode called A Fashion Heist during the show's 1974-75 run, appearing as a relatively unknown actress who was still building her television career before she would become a household name as Kelly Garrett on Charlie's Angels. At the time of her Get Christie Love appearance, Smith was just another working actress taking guest roles on various television shows to gain experience and exposure, with no indication that she would soon become one of the most recognizable faces on television. The episode title, A Fashion Heist, suggests that Smith's character was likely involved in a storyline related to the fashion industry, which would have been a perfect fit for the actress who would later become known for her elegant style and beauty on Charlie's Angels. This guest appearance came at a crucial time in Smith's career, when she was actively auditioning for roles and building relationships within the television industry that would eventually lead to her breakthrough casting. The timing of Smith's appearance on Get Christie Love makes it particularly interesting from a television history perspective, as it represents a brief moment when two groundbreaking female-led action shows intersected. Get Christie Love was already making history as the first network drama series to star a black woman in the lead role, while Charlie's Angels would soon revolutionize television by featuring three women as equal partners in an action series rather than supporting characters. Smith's appearance on the show also demonstrates how the relatively small world of 1970s television allowed actors to move between different series and build their careers through guest appearances, often working with the same producers, directors, and casting directors who would remember their performances when bigger opportunities became available. Her role on Get Christie Love was just one step in the career path that would lead her to become one of the original Angels. Fact 12. Controversial opening scene language. The opening scene of the Get Christie Love pilot movie featured an extremely controversial exchange of racial language that would be absolutely impossible to broadcast on network television today, demonstrating just how different the standards and sensitivities of 1974 were compared to modern broadcasting practices. In this scene, Christie goes undercover as a prostitute to catch a serial killer who has been targeting women working the streets, and during this dangerous assignment, she encounters a potential customer who becomes frustrated when she turns down his advances. When Christie refuses the man's proposition and starts to walk away, he responds by calling her an extremely offensive racial slur that was shocking even by the standards of the 1970s. Rather than simply walking away or responding with silence, Christie delivers an equally provocative comeback, calling the man a related offensive term that was just as inflammatory and inappropriate as what he had said to her. This exchange was particularly surprising because it appeared in a made-for-television movie that was designed to appeal to mainstream network audiences rather than in a theatrical release that might have been expected to push boundaries with more explicit language. The fact that ABC allowed this dialogue to air during prime time shows how different the television landscape was in the mid-70s, when networks were willing to include content that would cause immediate controversy and probably result in significant penalties today. The scene has become notorious among fans of the show and television historians who study the evolution of broadcast standards, as it represents a moment when network television was experimenting with more realistic and gritty content before settling into the more sanitized approach that would characterize most cop shows for decades afterward. Modern viewers who discover this scene are often shocked that such language was ever considered acceptable for network television, even during an era known for pushing social boundaries. Fact 13. Secret love story dropped. The original Get Christie Love pilot movie featured a romantic storyline between Christie and her police captain Casey Reardon, played by Harry Gardino, that involved a secret affair and obvious sexual tension between the two characters. But this entire romantic subplot was completely abandoned when the show transitioned to a regular weekly series. In the pilot, Gardino's character made clear romantic advances toward Christie, and she would sometimes encourage his flirtations while other times archly refusing his semi-advances, creating a complex relationship dynamic that added personal drama to the professional police work. The romantic tension between Christie and Captain Reardon was particularly significant because it represented an interracial relationship on network television in 1974, which was still extremely rare and controversial at that time. The pilot hinted at this black-and-white romance through subtle moments and charged glances, building toward what appeared to be a romantic resolution in the closing scene, though the relationship was presented through hints and suggestions rather than explicit romantic scenes. However, when the series moved into regular production, the entire romantic storyline was completely eliminated, and Harry Gardino's character disappeared entirely from the show. The producers replaced him with Charles Cioffi as Lieutenant Matt Reardon, who had a purely professional relationship with Christie that contained no romantic undertones or personal complications whatsoever. This dramatic change from pilot to series suggests that either the network executives or the producers decided that the interracial romantic subplot was too controversial for ongoing weekly television, or that other factors related to the show's direction made them want to focus purely on Christie's police work rather than her personal relationships. The elimination of this storyline meant that viewers who had seen the pilot and expected to follow Christie's romantic life, were left wondering what had happened to that aspect of her character development. Fact 14. Star had recording career. Teresa Graves had a successful recording career long before she became famous as Christie Love, starting her professional entertainment journey as a member of the popular singing group the Doodletown Pipers, which she joined in 1966 after being discovered by the group's founder George Wilkins while she was still in high school. Graves had been offered a fully paid music scholarship to the University of Southern California, but she chose to pursue her performing career instead by accepting Wilkins' invitation to join the Pipers, a decision that would launch her into the entertainment industry. The Doodletown Pipers were a well-known vocal group during the late 1960s, and Graves spent 3 years touring North America with them, performing in clubs across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico, gaining valuable experience as a professional entertainer, and developing the stage presence that would later serve her well on television. Her time with the group helped her build the confidence and performance skills that would make her stand out when she auditioned for other opportunities in show business. In 1970, Graves decided to pursue a solo recording career and released a self-titled album that showcased her versatility as a vocalist through a collection of popular cover songs. The album included her versions of several major hits from that era, including Everybody's Talking, which had been made famous by Harry Nilsson, My Cherie Amour by Stevie Wonder, Hey Jude by the Beatles, and A Time for Us, which had been popularized as the love theme from the movie Romeo and Juliet. Her solo album demonstrated that Graves had a strong singing voice and could handle different musical styles, from folk-influenced ballads to soul-inspired numbers, showing the range that had made her a valuable member of the Doodletown Pipers and would later contribute to her success on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Fact 15. Boom, mic visible error. The Get Christie Love pilot movie contains one of the most obvious production mistakes in television history, with a boom microphone clearly visible in the lower left side of the screen during a quiet domestic scene where Christie feeds her fish in her apartment. This technical error is particularly noticeable because it happens during a calm, intimate moment that was supposed to show viewers Christie's personal life away from her dangerous police work, making the intrusion of filming equipment especially jarring and distracting for anyone who spots it. The boom mic mistake represents the kind of production error that was more common in the 1970s, when television movies were often made on tight budgets and rushed schedules that didn't allow for the careful attention to detail that modern productions typically receive. The crew members responsible for holding the microphone boom probably didn't realize that their equipment had drifted into the camera's field of view, and the mistake wasn't caught during filming or editing, allowing it to make it into the final version that aired on ABC. This type of visible equipment error was especially embarrassing for a pilot movie that was supposed to showcase the potential of a new series to network executives and audiences, since it suggested that the production team wasn't paying close enough attention to basic technical details. The fish feeding scene was meant to humanize Christie and show her softer side, in contrast to her tough cop persona, but the boom microphone hanging in the frame completely undermined the intended effect by reminding viewers that they were watching a television production rather than getting lost in Christie's world. The mistake has become a favorite discovery among fans who enjoy spotting production errors in classic television shows, and it serves as a reminder of how much more technically sophisticated modern television and film production has become compared to the relatively low-budget made-for-TV movies of the mid-70s.